A view regarding Jeffrey Jackson at the Royal Australian Commission is my view. It isn't for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. It is for people coming out of Jehovah's Witnesses. They may not agree, ex-witnesses may not agree, but I'm allowed to give my view.
This Royal Commission, but definitely it becomes obvious that we need to inform some. We need to put restrictions on that person as to any type of association with minors. And if a person is genuinely innocent, they're not doing this, they should not mind the fact that they can clear their name by not being involved at all with dealing with children. Your Honor, could I just mention, as a reminder, you see, Jehovah's Witnesses, because we respect the family unit, we don't have separate Sunday schools, we don't run youth camps separately, so we believe that things should be done within the family, but the spiritual help that we can give and trying to protect, avoiding contact with someone who's accused with minors is a little easier for us because we don't have those youth group separate type arrangements.
How many lies does Jeffrey Jackson have to come out with? We don't have Sunday schools. They take them out on the ministry. Publishers take them out on the ministry. So there are paedophiles within this organisation. But he lies. They have study groups, meetings where these paedophiles are. They have gatherings with children around people's houses where paedophiles pray.
Does anyone else have any questions? Yes, David.
I'm sorry, I'm not. No. I haven't lived in Australia for 36 years, and I haven't certainly had a chance to look through the files.
Well, BCG was one of the witness statements and gave evidence at this commission. Have you haven't had the opportunity to read her evidence or witness statement?
I haven't. I'm sorry. The reason I came here was to care for my ailing father, and that's taken a lot of my time. Plus, I wasn't aware of the fact that I would be called before the commission.
I understand that, Mr. Jackson, but just do you not think that it is important? I appreciate your own personal circumstances, not a criticism, but do you appreciate that it is very important for people in such senior positions as yours to really have a good understanding of the perspective of a survivor of abuse as BCG is?
I agree with that comment, and let me say, I empathize. I don't know the details of what happened to the person you're representing, but I certainly empathize with whatever tragedy he or she has had to face.
But do you agree that unless your organisation takes organises some research or study into the plight of people such as BCG, they will never really understand how the processes you have in place affect them.
That is a valid comment.
And at this stage, would you agree that you have not really undertaken or organised to undertake any such research or studies into the experience of people, young people, or people of any age that have been abused within the organisation?
That is a little hard for me to say, give a definitive answer. Within the parameters of how we normally do research for publications and so on, and the fact that our service departments are handling cases such as your client, they have considered a lot of the approaches that we've taken, and that's why we have changed things. And I'm sure the policies have changed since the time of the
policies have not changed for child abuse. This organisation doesn't care. Why does it not care? Because it treats the victims like they are the apostates, or they are shunned, or whatever. They don't want to know. They don't want to deal with it. They may have magazines that show, child abuse is bad. If it was so bad in their organisation, why didn't they give the government the 50,000 paedophiles in their organisation that it knows that it's got, that have been disfellowshipped? They do not care about the victims of child abuse, and it's sad, but also, I don't know. I think what you expect from a cult.
The person you were representing was actually helped or handled.
Just remaining on that point, you're aware that a Dr. Monica Applewhite gave evidence before the Commission?
I am aware, but I certainly didn't get a chance to see it. I apologize.
Are you aware that she was provided with some documentation, with some witness statements from the Jehovah's Witness elders, but she was not provided with any witness statements from the survivors of abuse that have been provided during the course of this proceedings?
I'm sorry. I'm really not in a position to say anything about it, because could I just explain, as empathetic as I am to the case, what I would hope for is that at the end of this commission, those who have had far more experience than I have in this subject will be giving recommendations to the governing body.
He is part of the governing body. He knows their policies. He has the power to change those policies, but his organisation won't change those practices, and you will see Jehovah's Witnesses who are being abused, taking their victims, taking their predators to court and suing the Watchtower. But the Watchtower will play the game that they're not an organisation, they're not responsible for people outside of the home or in the kingdom halls. That will be their way of trying to get out of it, because that's how they're already playing it.
I appreciate that, and certainly I've certainly noted what you have said in the evidence today. I just want to make the point that, can you understand how people like BCG, who have had nothing but just really very traumatic experiences, feel very concerned when they feel that their voices are not being listened to at all by the senior members of your organisation?
I'd be very disappointed if that's the case, and certainly I would hate for that impression to be given to the person you're representing.
Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're listening to this, victims are disappointed with the organisation because they don't care. This guy doesn't care either. You may be saying, oh, this is just apostate speaking. But when you go through the whole interview of Jeffrey Jackson, he's been lying, and he knows.
Well, and so in your efforts to ensure that in the future the processes will be reviewed to ensure that the perspective of the abused person is given proper heed, do you think it would be a good idea for your organisation to actually conduct some sort of research?
I I think the more information we can get, the better, because all of us are trying to deal with a very horrific problem, and any amount of information we can get would be beneficial.
I just want to make the point here. It is a very horrific problem, but the problems that have been that BCG and others like her have experienced are compounded by their experience by having to go through the processes within your own congregation. So what I'm saying, it's a universal problem, but there are specific issues that clearly just relate to how the Jehovah's Witnesses have been dealing with it. So I guess what I'm suggesting, how important it is that it be a review that have specific regard to your processes.
I take your point as a valid point.
Just want to come to, on the issue of BCG, I know you're not aware of her case, but I will just very briefly give an overview, having regard to trying not to take too much time. But she made a complaint. It was ultimately, initially there was, because of the one witness rule, it was not accepted. Ultimately, on an appeal and with a confession, there was an acceptance of her complaint. She essentially did not make a full complaint to the authorities until after she left the congregation, I think approximately 15 years later. But in the interim, when the abuse was by her father, in the interim, approximately 7 years after she was initially abused, she learned that her father, BCH, had been reinstated back into the church. That's a very short history, but upon that event, she wrote an impassioned 5-page letter to the head office in Australia about her position and sought help. What she also sought was an assurance that the matter would be handled. She was leaving it absolutely. Her issue was entirely, this is a devout young Jehovah's Witness woman, she was leaving it in the care of the Jehovah's Witness church to do something. And she wrote a letter. She said, "Now I can only leave the matter in your hands and pray Jehovah directs the outcome, whatever it may be." But she implored head office Bethel not to ignore the letter and to do something about the terrible situation. She explained about her suicide attempt. She explained the devastation to her and to her sisters who were also abused. What was sent back to her was a letter, and if we could look at please at Tender Bundle 30.
Yes, I have it here.
You have that letter. This was after 7 years of this. BCG has given evidence that after she made the complaint, that she did not receive any assistance or certainly sufficient support, or even scriptural support. But if you could look at that letter, you can see that it says, firstly, always throw your burden on Jehovah. Can you see that in the second paragraph?
In the second paragraph, yes, I can.
Yes. She was also told about the heartwarming prayer of David is appropriate, where he entreated Jehovah to preserve his tears in a skin bottle. She has given evidence here to the effect that she felt silenced by what she was told. And she also said, and what she was essentially advised, if you go to the third paragraph, is that that with Jehovah's help and your own effort, you can look forward to the new world of peace. But she was really given no solace to deal with what was going to continue to be very painful for her in this world. Do you agree with that? Having read through that letter. Yes, and this is the first time I've seen the letter. My apologies, but I
would agree with you that if this is the only help she got, certainly that is not enough. But as I said, I don't know the case. What help did the elders give her personally?
A lie. He would know what letters that would be sent out, and it just shows that there's no care about abuse victims. It's up to you, Jehovah's Witnesses, to decide about Jeffrey Jackson. It's not for me to tell you. I give my view. And the thing is that there are people like Mike and Kim that you can log on to on YouTube and see the years of videos that they've done on child abuse, on the victims and the work that they've done, on the policies, on the court cases, and there's other people that have done it too, to help and support the victims as much as what they can as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that the Watchtower claims that are evil people. But the Watchtower doesn't want to help victims. It just wants to throw it under the carpet. You may say these are men of God. My view is that they are not. But that's up to you, what you believe. And they're just acting out here. It is complete hypocrisy. But when you look at what a cult is, what leaders do, who sincerely believe what they're doing is God's will, but they don't care about the victims. Poor BCV, I hope she's okay.
What are the circumstances? But I agree with you that something far more than a letter like this would be required to help her.
And do you also appreciate that it could in fact be even some strict reliance on just giving scriptural guidance to someone who has suffered extreme trauma can in fact result in even a more damaging outcome for that particular person. Do you accept that?
What I accept is that sometimes when a letter is written, it's very hard to convey the spirit behind the letter. I certainly would expect as a member of the governing body that anyone writing a letter from a branch would do so in the spirit of love and concern. So perhaps, but I do admit that if someone read this, they perhaps could not see that love and concern.
And we accept that by what she has said in her letter, which was, now I can only leave the matter in your hands, and I won't, it's a 5-page letter, but there's not enough time to go through clearly here.
Which is a normal kind of letter that the organisation would send out.
Now, but throughout that letter she is seeking assistance, guidance, help. She's told you about the trauma she has experienced, but there's a real duty, isn't there, to do something about the overall well-being of a person such as BCG.
I agree with what you said. They need far more than just one letter.
And do you agree that given the nature of the congregation, as I think you have said before, that it's not just a case of congregation where people turn up and go to church, it's a family, that there is therefore an even greater duty within that family to ensure that people like BCG are cared for in a comprehensive way.
I agree totally with you, probably more so than you realise. Each sheep in the congregation is someone that needs to be cared for and loved, and I find it very, very hard to believe that this was the only hope that was given to her, and if in fact that was the case, my heart goes out to her, and certainly we need to make sure that more help is given than this.
Theocratic warfare is where elders, witnesses in court, and things like this, the Royal Australian Commission, are allowed to lie. They will not give the victims any help at all. He may say that sheep are important in his flock, but when it comes to child abuse victims, they're either told to shut up. If they don't, then we know that they'll be disfellowshipped. They don't help them because it's an embarrassment to this organisation. And he knows that they're not going to deal with it. After when the ex-witnesses standing outside Walk Hill campaigning for the 2-witness rule to change. And then one of the helpers of the governing body said, "We will never change the rules." And we've seen in every country that child abuse is rampant in this organisation. We know that it's happening in other religious organisations. But when they come out with being loyal to the organisation, giving your life to this organisation, and that you're going to live on a paradise earth, this organisation can't deal with child abuse. It hides it. Look at the court cases. Pennsylvania, was it 9, including elders, minstrel servants, sexually assaulting children, adults. One commits suicide so he can't be prosecuted. But the organisation, when that happens, is quiet. It doesn't say nothing. And then it says, yes, we do deal with child abuse. We think that it is important to deal with it, but it never does. And the court cases and the documents of investigations, like what happened in Britain and in Australia and beginning in other countries now, that they don't care. And you've got to feel for the victims like us who sincerely believed that Jehovah would help us. But that Jehovah didn't help the victims. The organisation didn't give them support because the organisation hasn't designed itself in that way. None of these people are professional psychiatrists, doctors, so on. But they believe that they're the governing body, that God has appointed them. But in their laws and doctrines, this is meant to be wrong. This is meant to be, child abuse is meant to be detestable to Jehovah. And in their brain, just disfellowshipping a paedophile amazes me that they let him come back into the congregation so that he does it again. No policies to protect children in the organisation. No help for the victims of child abuse. And there may be many who are now being abused and have been told to leave it in Jehovah's hand. And if they tell the public, then the organisation will disfellowship them. So they don't care about the victims. They just will shut them up. They don't want to help. They're not interested. In their brain, all they care about is being through their procedures and whatever. They'll make their procedures look like that they are protecting children. They are. But isn't it funny how if you're apostate, they won't let you come back in for years. But if you're a paedophile, they let them come back in very, very quick. And there may be victims that still believe that this is Jehovah's organisation, that need help, need support, and may be feeling suicidal. This guy doesn't care. The governing body doesn't care. But it knows that it is allowed to lie, what we call theocratic warfare, pretending to care. Because if he did care, why was it that most organisations paid the money to help the victims? But it took this organisation, all it cared about was not about the victims, but about money. And the Australian Commission, the government had to threaten them to lose their charity status for them to help the victims of child abuse. So it shows how psychotic these governing body members are, and they don't care about the victims, but they care about the predators, which I think is sick.
And I just want to come back to the point before about, or the questions that I asked you before in relation to ensuring that there was some research done. For example, Dr. Applewhite came here and really to really say that the education program was a good one and perhaps better than some others, but there was no research to demonstrate how effective, in fact, the Jehovah's Witness program was. And again, I apologise for the length of my question, but I'm trying to get to a point, which is that it is really disheartening for the survivors that evidence from people such as Dr. Applewhite, without any reference whatsoever to the victim's experience, suggests to them that the reason for engaging experts is to, in fact, rather, if I can say, has more to do with the reputation of the Jehovah's Witnesses than any real attempt to get to a deep understanding of their experience.
I certainly hope that is not the case.
That was the case. They paid the doctor to make the Jehovah's Witnesses look like that their policies were good, everything's okay, but they didn't care about the victims. I'm just going further on one bit.
What's the difference?
That is true, Your Honour. That is true.
Why are
To start, could I just say, with regard to sexual abuse, we've already made the statement that the child would be believed. But in these general principles that I tried to highlight with regard to a divorce or some other things, perhaps a child who's dependent upon a parent may be influenced in some way by them.
So this is here to mark out the risk that someone's evidence might be influenced by another person, including an adult.
That's correct, Your Honour, yes. And it's only a reminder. It's in no way designed to say that children cannot give evidence.
Very well.
Just in relation to, given that you've categorised the testimony of youth, is there any other, the testimony of children, is there, I'm just the testimony of children is not mentioned at all there, so I'm just concerned as to whether the testimony of children would have even lesser weight because of the age of a child and perhaps their vulnerability to influence.
I'm not quite sure of your question, I'm sorry, but this is just in the context of, like you see, the next bullet point mentions the testimony of unbelievers and disfellowship or disassociated ones. It says may also be considered. So again, if someone has disassociated themselves, perhaps they have a grudge against someone in the organisation, but this person is credible in giving a witness, they could give a testimony. So it's just giving some general guidelines, common sense, nous type things to those that are handling these cases, but in no way is it designed to stop these ones.
I was going to ask you about this bullet point, but you took us to it. It separates out the testimony of unbelievers and disfellowshipped or disassociated ones. It says that it may be considered, but it must be weighed carefully. It suggests to an outsider that what the document is doing is expressing a need for extra caution when it's the evidence of an unbeliever as opposed to a believer that's being considered. Is that a correct reading of the document?
The reading of the document is saying someone who doesn't agree with or feel...
It wouldn't let someone who's disfellowshipped, disassociated, be a witness. He knows that. Hopefully this one's better.
Thank you.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes, Your Honour. Two things. One, in relation to the directions. Those were made a week ago on the basis of 4 weeks for submissions and 4 weeks thereafter. Given that we've had this evidence today, a week later, and that Dr. Applewhite's report is still to come. I was going to ask whether we could have...
No, we'll leave the directions in place. It's important, like it is with all matters, that we ensure that we dispose of them as efficiently as possible. I'm not prepared today, by reason of the fact that we have this further evidence, to vary the directions. If, however, there are circumstances that emerge down the track, then I won't be so hard as to say there can never be an application, but not today.
As Your Honour pleases. And then the only remaining issue, in the intervening week, a further document has come to light, which really just sits in the sequence of correspondence to bodies relating to correspondence to all bodies of elders. And I'd like to leave to tender it. Well,
mark it separately.
It should be marked separately, Ron.
Mark it Exhibit 28.
So what it is, it's a letter dated 10 October 2002 from Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia to all bodies of elders in Australia. And that's all that I have.
There's nothing further on agenda.
All stands.